Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fast Food Films. That took me all of 5 minutes to put together, and most of that was render time. We'll come up with something better, I swear. But at the moment, that's all we'll have. This week, we will be talking about Stargate, an international teleportation device. An interstellar teleportation device is found in Egypt, but it leads to a planet with humans resembling ancient Egyptians who worship the god Ra. Can Daniel Jackson and his team stop the malevolent god before he can wreck the planet with the Quadria or whatever it is? Naquadah.
Yeah.
Naquadah.
Quadria.
No, because Naquadah is like the more powerful version of Naquadah. It's like kind of like helium-3 in comparison to helium.
Yeah. Now we're geeking. We haven't even got 2 minutes in. You know that.
Yeah, I know.
So, is that your intro?
That's right. That was my intro. I thought I'd be quick and to the point. Because
Right. Okay. So yes, we're talking about that film. You know, about a gate, Stargate that you go through. What's the name of the film again?
It's a big round Stargate, isn't it?
It's big brown Stargate. That thing they go through. What was that series called? If you don't know what we're quoting, go back and look at our podcast because Nigel came up with a classic, and it's part of the reason why we're doing it. And also because it's one of my favorite films. I love this film because it also spawned one of my favorite TV series, or three of my favorite TV series, really, which was SG-1, Atlantis, and then what's its face at the end?
Universe.
Which I forgot. Universe, Stargate Universe.
And SGU series too.
But this was the film that started it all. And actually, this is another Roland Emmerich film. This is arguably the film that launched him into sort of like big budget blockbuster films, and you know, where he became king of the fast food movies. Because before that, I think his previous film was Universal Soldier with Jean-Claude Van Damme. So this was his first sort of big budget blockbuster, although it was never expected to make as much money as it did. It wasn't made in a true blockbuster film style because, let's face it, some of the effects are a bit ropey in this. Even at the time, they were a bit ropey. But it's a good story. Now, if you listen to our main podcast, you will know that we hate critics. And unsurprisingly, the critics did not like this film. But the cinema goers did. And in actual fact, it broke the what the Americans call the fall box office record for having the highest grossing opening weekend. In actual fact, that record had been beaten in September and in December. So, but for the month of October, it had the highest grossing opening weekend of all time, and nobody expected to do it. And in actual fact, when this film was first made, I'll sort of go over this bit first and we'll go into the story, and then I'll go through some facts afterwards. But this is quite interesting. This film was made without any major studios involved in the actual making of the film. It was only after the film was made that they then started shopping it to people, and eventually MGM agreed to release the film under the MGM banner because they had no big films for that sort of period until Christmas, so they agreed to do it. As a result of the agreement that Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin signed with them, they kind of lost control to the rights of the Stargate world. And hence SG-1 and all these others were born. But we'll get into that more later. First off, as Gareth said, he's sort of gone through the plot. To me, this has probably the best Act 1 of any fast food movie. I think it's even better than Independence Day.
Are you talking about they start up the Stargate?
Yeah, the bit until they go through the gate, that first sort of 20 minutes of the film where they, I mean, you know, at the beginning you see the gate, but you have no fucking idea what it is, right? You just see them digging up this weird looking circle thing out of the Egyptian desert, and then you don't see it again until it's all hooked up to these, great big sort of electric delivering arms and stuff. And you don't see that until near the end of the first act. And I just love that sort of reveal, and I like how James Spader's
the reveal of the Stargate actually happened before then when they're digging it up in Egypt.
Yes, I said that you do see the Stargate, but you don't know what it is. You don't, if you don't watch the trailers for this movie, you just go in, not knowing really what this film is about, other than the fact it's called a Stargate. You kind of guess that it's a Stargate, but you don't know much about what it is or how it works. So that initial reveal is epic. And yes, this is the first actor version. So I love this.
Yeah, you're right. It is epic because when they switch it on, because you don't know if it's going to work or not, and it is so cool because the first time they start up, it's just like they found this ancient thing, and then it works. They are ancient aliens, according to the History Channel of all channels.
What was so clever about this film? What was so clever about the story is, people for years have speculated that the pyramids have been built by aliens, and they really sort of go into this in this film, and they bring a bit of sort of who doesn't like a good ancient Egyptian documentary and stuff like that, and that combined with the sci-fi world. It was awesome. I mean, it was just such a clever idea, and this scene when they first switch it on, and and everything starts shaking as you see here, and it's really quite dramatic and tense, and I just love this first act.
I was going to say the only other scene in any other movies that this compares to is the reveal of the UFOs over all the cities in Independence Day.
Which we've already covered.
Right.
And funny enough,
end of the first act that's brilliant.
Roland Emmerich is very good at first acts. I think. I mean, certainly in Independence Day and in this. I mean, I love it. I loved it. But here's the thing, right? And this is something I don't understand. There is a director's cut out there.
Yep, I've seen it.
And the director's cut it's a bit like the director's version of Batman versus Superman. It might be still a shit film, but that film, when you see the director's cut, makes sense. When you see the director's cut of SG-1, you understand why they take the bomb through. Because if you see the cinematic release of this film, it's like, well, why were they expecting there to be hostile aliens? What was going through their heads? What intelligence did they have? How did they know? You don't just sort of take a nuclear bomb through a freaking gate to another planet, on the off chance that you might meet some hostile aliens. What possesses them? And there are two, and they're literally, I think it's about 2 or 3 minutes of extra scenes, but the first scene is when they're digging up the gate right at the beginning. And you could argue that this scene could have been cut out, but the second scene was absolutely critical in my opinion. But the first scene you could argue, because it does give you more of a hint that there's aliens involved, because when the gate gets lifted out, underneath is a fossilized version of one of the Ra's soldiers, effectively, and you see it briefly. Although you don't really, it just looks like an Egyptian, what's his face? The dogs. The second scene when they're both sitting there talking about it, and they're going, they actually say this isn't, these are they hostile, blah blah blah, and insinuating they're aliens when actually they're not. There's only one alien in this. But that's again a critical scene as to why O'Neill and West send the new device with them, and I don't understand why that scene was cut. I could understand why the first one was cut, but not the second one. The second one just adds so much.
There was also another scene that was cut, which made me stick. It was really stuck out in my mind. Was the scene where they've landed on the planet, and Daniel Jackson's trying to figure out why how to get back, and then the soldiers get annoyed at him and start throwing their luggage at him. Do you remember that scene? There's a bit in there just
Yeah.
before where you've got the guy from Third Rock from the Sun. I can't remember if it's Harry or something. And he's explaining how the Stargate works. He turns around, he goes, if you don't dial the right combination, it can pop you out in the middle of space, in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. It has to have another gate to connect to. So we have to make sure that we dial a gate that matches the addresses and stuff, which then sets up SG-1, but wasn't in the film. And it's weird.
Well,
because that bit is not color graded. When he put it in the film, so you watch it and it's blatantly not color graded. It's really bizarre.
This was never conceived as a single movie. It was conceived as a trilogy. Okay, and Roland Emmerich at the time said this was going to be. This was like a trilogy. It was always meant to be a trilogy. The second film was meant to deal with something completely different to ancient Egypt. There was going to be another gate, because the idea was, or the basic premise was that for some reason Daniel Jackson was going to return to Earth 12 years later, and then he was going to unearth an existence of a second gate, which SG-1 later used as an idea. But there was a second gate on Earth because the idea was that Ra brought that gate to Earth like he did in SG-1. Mm-hmm. And then they were going to deal with a completely different mythology, i.e. not ancient Egyptian. But then the third film was going to connect all of Earth's sort of mythologies, like the Mayans and things like that. The rumor was they were going to do the Mayans and all the other sort of ancient races on Earth. And there was going to be something that was never spotted before that connected all of them. And there were going to be other Ra aliens out there. They were going to be the big bad, but they were going to be out there. And there was this entire thing. And after the sort of Stargate TV franchise finished, MGM did sort of start developing these movies again with Roland Emmerich, but then they kind of got stalled in 2016 and never saw the light of day, which is actually a shame because I would have liked to have seen his vision for those movies. And it wouldn't have minded if it wasn't connected to SG-1, because SG-1 rewrote quite a lot of the rules from the film, i.e. they made Ra was made to go old, but in the film he is a full being, not just a worm parasite. The gate changed, obviously, because you then got the sexy red lights on the gate, which you didn't have in the original film, and there were numerous other changes, obviously acting changes. O'Neill's character is arguably completely different, but I did utterly love Richard Dean Anderson as General O'Neill in Stargate SG-1. It was one of the best things about it. He brought good humor to that show. And later on, Ben Bowder did a very good job of taking over. It was genius that they brought Ben Bowder and What's-Her-Face in together to sort of, get that far.
But they played the opposite
characters. The chemistry did work.
They played the opposite characters to what they were in Farscape. You had Ben Bowder's character as the stiff military one, and then her as the wacky adventurer who do.
But it worked. But it worked. But we'll get back onto SG-1. But it was interesting. I would like to have seen a Roland Emmerich sort of sequel to this, because I have a very fond sort of attachment to this film. I love it. I do. I went to see it with my mum and dad.
You know that Stargate kind of ripped off something from Doctor Who, don't you?
Yeah, it's been accused of ripping off something from some school person as well.
This is Doctor Who Pyramids of Mars, yeah? To which they didn't have the robotic mummies. And I will give them that. They didn't have the robotic mummies, yeah? But when you watch it, it's like kind of... If I've got the clip right, please say I got the bloody clip right. You've got... Sorry, hang on a second. There we go. So they're all kind of worship the god. Oh, look, there's like a Stargate thing, isn't there? Okay, it's not as cool.
A little bit.
It's not as cool. And then you've got the ancient god.
It's not as cool.
You've got the ancient god. It's clever. And then you've got the ancient god like Ra person come through. I can't remember his name. It's like Set. I don't know if he's Set or whatever. And so you've got the people. You've got the people mistaking gods for aliens, etc. And this was done. This is the thing. Is that
Oh, it certainly borrowed ideas, but then most sci-fi these days borrows ideas, or rehashes concepts.
I don't want classic Doctor Who not getting a nod for its contribution.
No, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. I didn't have that in my notes, but because that didn't come up. But yeah, that's fair enough.
You did. Oh, you didn't do research properly.
Oh, I did do quite a lot of research. So we have the sort of like, you know, they arrive. This is Act 2, which is all about sort of discovering where they are, and then towards they go off to they discover like this slave sort of mine where all these people are working and digging. And here's another information for you. So some of those shots were shot on the first day of shooting, right? Specifically where you see hundreds of extras moving, you know that was shot on day one. Want to know why? Because the filming conditions were so bad that most of the extras, because they had over 1,000 extras, didn't turn up for day 2 of filming, and they couldn't persuade other extras to come in. So where you see them all gathering around the soldiers, about 75% of those are mannequins.
Hey, it worked for Chris Nolan for
it did. It did.
Mannequins in.
But there was mannequins, a lot of mannequins in those scenes. But then they go off to the city, and then Ra's spaceship, which again, you know, looks different to what was in SG-1, but lands on the pyramid, you know, and all the fucking UFO nutters just went like that, you know, and all had an ejaculation because, you know, I knew they were landing fucking mass. It's great because it plays into that so well, and then you finally meet the very effeminate Ra, and there's some interesting stuff about this guy. Sorry,
it's a guy from the Crying Game.
Right. Okay. So the actor in question is called Jay Davidson, right? And he quit acting after this particular yes, it was in the Crying Game. He was in, but he supposedly quit acting, although he has since acted in other roles. But Stargate was his last movie, even though it's not listed as such in IMDb. It was because he couldn't remember his lines. He had nipple rings which he just had put in, so he wasn't able to appear bare-chested, which is what the costume what was meant to be. And he was notoriously difficult on stage. He's a very odd fellow. He famously gave an interview later on where he came out as gay, but said he had found it very hard to find partners because gay people like butch men, and he wasn't very butch. In fact, he said he was a very effeminate person, which he does look quite effeminate in this. He since has butched up, and his entire body is now tattooed. Literally, from neck down, everything is tattooed. If you see a picture of him nowadays, yeah. Very odd. Very, very strange chap, and you know, you listen to what Hollywood speak say about him. Apparently, he was a bit of a dick on
set.
On set. So yeah, it's but there's another scene here which a lot of people have where you see a lot of scantily clad children. And Roland Emmerich has since come out, because, you know, in this day and age, people are going to have an issue with this. But it was done on purpose to make you feel uneasy. Because when you see that, you do feel a bit uneasy. Because they're kind of wearing princess. They very particularly sort of used Leia's slave girl costume as an influence here, and it was done completely on purpose to make you feel uneasy. Because you look at that, it does kind of make you feel uneasy. I mean, the strange-looking kids, all of them were picked out, all pretty much naked, surrounding him. It was done. It was entirely done on purpose.
Touch of Children of the Corn feeling.
Yes, to it. It was entirely on purpose, and it very much works.
Yeah, see, there you go. They've got that vacant look. And then there's the human shield aspect of it too.
Yes,
where they do the thing. The other thing too, Transformers. This is where that whole thing kind of comes. Where you got all the.
Well, actually, that came from the Batmobile. The first people to do that effect was the Batmobile in 1989.
But look cool.
Because the Batmobile car has a shield that does the same fucking thing. And then I thought, oh, you could put that on a spaceship. I had that idea.
Yes, you
right?
said
I thought
that
you could put that on a spaceship. And then fucking Voyager 2 years later. Oh, my idea, you bastards. But it is very cool effect. It is a very cool effect. And that's what makes it. And this is where he goes to shoot him, isn't it? And you get this. The kids all just jump around him again, making you feel very easy. Daniel Jackson gets, and this is where you get sort of introduced to the idea of the regeneration sort of sarcophagus. Seriously, one of those kids looks a bit like
sarcophagus was also in Doctor Who too. That regenerated.
I'm aware of it, and yeah, this is where he puts him in the sarcophagus and regenerates him, and then they escape, and then they come back. And they get traps, and then there's another fight scene, and just when you think all is over, the slaves revolt. But again, Roland Emmerich, don't know if you noticed, right? Roland Emmerich seems to have a problem with the concept of time, right? So basically, General O'Neill decides to blow up, destroy everything, but let Daniel Jackson and the others get back before he does it. He's going to take out the spaceship. And so he starts the countdown. Just at that point, Daniel Jackson's bit of fluff gets shot. So he wants to rescue her. So he goes into the ship.
Hang on. Before you right, hold on. You do know that timers in movies, are based on drama, and this was illustrated best in the film. Hang on a second. It was illustrated best in the film Galaxy Quest. Do you remember in Galaxy Quest? Because it stopped on -1, because that's what happened.
But that was Galaxy Quest was taking the piss out of, because Roland Emmerich seems to be an absolute. I mean, don't get me wrong. Since then, like not Need for Speed. What's his face? Fast and the Furious, which had like a 22-mile runway. Because I had like this 5-minute long fight on a runway, which some fucking clever dick worked out how fast the plane was going. And it's like the world's longest runway.
Hold on. Fast and the Furious. One thing I love about that movie is they made out that cars somehow could keep a plane down rather than the plane yanking them all off the ground and into the sky. I love that.
That's not even good.
No, they could. Do you think you got downforce? That plane's got fucking 18 times the fucking lift of your downforce combined.
But Roland Emmerich, I mean, he's a master of doing it. Don't get me wrong. And that it's arguable. Again, it's a lot. It's a 2-minute one, not a sort of like 30 seconds that turns into 2 minutes in Independence Day. This is 2 minutes that turns into 5 days. But this is what happens in this. So I'll set it up. So basically, the bomb's about to, the bomb is. He set the bomb, and he goes to turn the bomb off when he realizes that Daniel Jackson's got to save his girlfriend. And he realizes that Ra's dicked with it, and he can't turn off the time. So he's like, "You've got like 7 minutes." So Daniel Jackson manages to get up into the ship, resurrect to his girlfriend, bring her back, and then we've got 1 minute and 57 seconds, right? And in this 1 minute and 57 seconds, the entire slaves revolt, right? And you get this entire scene where they come running over the mountain, over the sand dune, which is really, really cool. You've got the leader running down, going, like that.
Aren't they doing that at the same time?
No, this starts because at 1 minute 57 mark, where you see it on the thing, Kowalski and all these guys are still in the middle. I literally just finished watching it, and I made a note of this because I thought this was funny. And they're all in the middle. Then the ships, Kowalski jumps out and surrenders. The ships land, right? They walk over, and if you look, the ships are parked on the horizon because they couldn't afford to build a full model of one of those gliders, so their little models parked off in the distance. So they walked all the way down to the thing, right? Then the slaves revolt, right? Then, because Ra realizes it, he manages to get his spaceship, take off, and that takeoff is like 15 to 20 seconds. And then the next thing you see, it's in fucking orbit of the planet. Then the 2 minute timer has about 20 seconds left on it, right? And he puts it in the really cool rings transportation device, and it gets beamed up, and then it all explodes. That is about 5 minutes, but a lot happens in that 1 minute and 57 seconds. A fucking lot. And it's brilliant. This is the bit before. This is before
Yes,
Shuri gets shot.
I'll
This
try
is
to find
the bit where they get trapped.
of the clip.
Um,
As it's
but
so
I mean, look, I'm joking aside because it doesn't matter, and you are right because there is a lot of drama in that one point. So, and I love the bit where they finally do revolt and they appear on the sort of the top of the dune, and he comes running down with that stick and he whacks one of them around the head. I mean, it's brilliant. And I love it, and I love that scene. And then there's a real sort of tearjerker afterwards where they all salute, and it's designed to be a bit like that, but again, it's fine. It gets the feels. It has all the feels. And then obviously Daniel Jackson stays with this lovely, beautiful girl, and they go back through the Stargate. But it was never designed to be the end. That was only the beginning. Now, as we always do in this, there is a continuous. There's quite a few, but there's a major one. Right. Just before Daniel Jackson goes through the gate, Catherine gives him the Ra pendant, right?
Yeah.
And then as Daniel Jackson is standing on the gate, he's got the Ra pendant on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it cuts back to a shot of Catherine, who is wearing the Ra pendant. And not only once, it's 3 separate shots of her. All after she's given it to Daniel Jackson, she's still got the Ra pendant on. Okay. You can see the chain. You can see the chain. You can see the chain. It's there. It's genuine. She's got it on. It's not a bad one, but it's there.
They're worse continuity. There are like massive plot holes in it. So that's what this.
Right, but this is a fast food movie, so we don't. Yes, there are plot holes in everywhere. There's massive plot holes in Independence Day. There was massive plot, but we love Independence Day and we love this film.
I just want to mention the Death Glider because my dad, who loves flight sims, got a mod for it so he could have the Death Glider from Stargate in it, and it's great because if you pump up the acceleration, you break orbit. The thing's it goes into orbit. You just sit there, and it's like you can just have it normal, and it's flying around like you would have on the thing, and then all of a sudden just hit the accelerator and off into space.
See, again, though the Death Gliders that you see in the original film have open cockpits, whereas the ones in SG-1 they decided they would be really cool space fighters, so they built proper cockpits for them, but they are open air in the original film because this is again a difference between the series and the film. I mean, don't get me. I think both can exist, but Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin famously hated the TV series because they wanted to make their movies and control was taken away from them, which was unfair because it made MGM a lot of money. It made far more money than it was expected. I mean, it was made for a very modest 55 million, which considering what they did and some of the sets that they had to build, because there was no soundstage large enough to fit the stage of the ship in. They had to go and do it in some huge aircraft hangar, the same one that the Spruce Goose was built in. That's how large they had to rent that to build the sets for this. So considering that it was a very modest 55 million, okay, some of the effects are ropey because they spent the money in other places, and you can tell. I mean, some of those sets are incredible. It made just shy of 200.
One of the best shots I had in that film is when they leave the temple and you have the wide thing and you get to see the pyramid. That shot is gorgeous. Where you've got the pyramid and you can see it from a distance, and I don't know if it's a matte painting or real or whatever. It looks absolutely brilliant.
The reveal of the pyramid when they first, I love the bit where they're walking down the steps and the camera angles are purposely sort of shot from above. And then suddenly you get this low camera angle and there's this great big pyramid behind them. And that was awesome. Again, awesome because you kind of didn't expect it. And I love that. I remember seeing that at the cinema going cool like that. I was like this 14-year-old kid who was just getting into sci-fi and this thing was awesome.
Did you say 14-year-old kid?
14-year-old kid. I was 14 when this movie came out. I remember going to see it with my mum and dad. It was We went to see. It was a family film outing, which was a very rare thing. We all went to see this film. I loved it. It was really good fun.
My parents went and watched it. So my mum and dad watched it, and my dad came back and went, "It's really good. I really enjoyed the hell out of that." So it was. There's some bits in there, like there's the alien that, because you were talking about earlier, where the alien that invades the kid. It isn't the same as the ones you get in the TV series. It's not a snake-like parasite. It's a full-blown. It looks like a grey alien with teeth. I think it's the best way of describing it. Which kind of fits back into that UFO conspiracy thing, where it kind of invades the guy's body and whatnot. That was cool. Sorry, Tanith says that she thought you said 42.
Sorry, the microphone might be good. 14-year-old kid.
14-year-old kid. But that thing with the what do you call it? With the parasite invading was really kind of cool, and it was like I really wanted to see the alien itself, because it was just one of those curiosity things. Maybe it exists somewhere in a cut somewhere along the line. I know
you get a shot of the face of the alien because
when it blows up,
the ship explodes. Yeah.
But I think they covered it in Stargate 1 because they said there was another life form that was a bit more hardy. It was a bit stronger, which the parasite then took into, which I thought was quite cool. It was really good. Outside Doctor Who, I hadn't seen anything like that. No,
it was unique.
So
it was unique, and again, the thing was, right, I would love to have seen their films in one form or another, the other two films that they were planning to make. But at the same time, SG-1 was really good. I mean, there was a lot... because it was a 22-episode thing, there was a lot of dead episodes in the first couple of seasons. But
I think when I watched Stargate SG-1, I think until they got rid of Apophis, when they got rid of him as a bad guy and they replaced him with people like Anubis and like kind of all the others, that's for me when it got interesting. It was a bit clanky otherwise.
There was an interesting thing because the pilot episode, right? Have you seen the original pilot episode or the cut version of the pilot episode? Do you know what I'm referring to here?
This is the one where they go to Teal'c's home planet.
So SG-1, the original pilot, was very much an 18. And it was meant to be adult related, and there was a hell of a lot of nudity in it. Because when Shuri is infected by the Goa'uld, she's lying on the table and she is butt naked, and it is full on completely naked, full on shots, and she gets cut open. There's another couple of scenes there. There's some swearing in it. There's a lot more adult thing, and they changed that. They changed it and they sort of softened it up. And I don't know. I think it could have been quite interesting if they'd gone, not just having the nudity kind of thing, but you know what I mean, going slightly down the adult route and getting it a bit more horror-like and gory. But I loved SG-1. I loved Atlantis. Out of all of them, I know you liked. I know that you liked Universe. I thought Universe was a good show, but I think they shouldn't have cancelled Atlantis and gone straight into Universe, because they completely changed the mood in Universe and they made it very downbeat. And the thing about Stargate was, and this is why I don't like Discovery, and part of the reason I don't like Star Trek, is it was hopeful, and they didn't have that in Universe. And they kept bringing O'Neill into it in Universe, and he was the only funny thing about it. And he kind of didn't fit in Universe because Universe was just so downtrodden. But I would have liked to have seen where it was going. But I was really pissed off when they cancelled Atlantis, because I don't know which one I prefer. I like both of them equally, I think, because I think Atlantis had lots of interesting concepts that managed to take it away from SG-1. But I loved SG-1 as well. I think there was a few, as I said, a few ropey episodes at the beginning, but there was a lot of good episodes as well. After Apophis went, Anubis was a much more interesting bad guy.
I did. Just point out, we've got a couple of people in the chat. We've got a guy called Gloin the Hobbit, I think he is. And he said the following: I disagree. The version that was on Showtime, which I think was the first couple of seasons before it moved over to Sci-Fi, was better. And then his answer. Hang on a second. His answer in relation to what you said was, "You get to see boobies."
Yeah, no, he's right. There was a lot of boobies in the first episode. He's absolutely right. That version you can get. I think the third season it started getting really good.
Version. I've got to check to see if I can watch Stargate somewhere, because I bought the entire season of Stargate. Sorry, the entire series of Stargate Atlantis on Amazon to watch, because I think I did over last summer when I had nothing to watch. So I might go back and do the same for Stargate, because
when it went over to Sci-Fi cut it all down so that they could syndicate the whole lot. But yeah, I'd forgotten it was on Showtime, so thanks for that, buddy. But yeah, he's right. You get to see boobies, but I think there are. Now it's been a long while, so I could be wrong here. But I seem to remember the first season of FG1. There were a few. I don't know. They seem to go. Their budget dropped. I think they spent a lot of money in the first few episodes, so a lot of planets ended up looking the same because they were all filmed in Vancouver, and they were always in forests.
They always filmed in that same patch of forest.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Even Universe did it at one point. Yeah,
that's what I mean. And by the third season, they got a much heftier budget, and therefore things started looking. But you see, I understand why Tanith says here she didn't like Universe. I think if Atlantis had still been on, Universe would have done better, because you would have had that antidote to Universe's downbeat thing, and you would have watched Universe because you're a Stargate fan.
The Universe one was. We need to. This is a much bigger. This is a bigger topic than the Stargate film, and we need a lot more time. And we might have to do another one on this. Separate on this, maybe a special, because there's so much to unpack, because they did loads. The amount of Stargates that they did was ridiculous, apart from they did get a world record from Guinness Book of World Records for the longest running TV series, which they then had to hand back because they realized they got it wrong, and it was Doctor Who was the longest running TV series, which was annoying.
One of the longest
episodes, I think, was the most amount of consecutive episodes. We do have to go through it, but we just go back to the film, because we have.
Yes, so I've got my interesting facts around the film. So
you're right. So you had your thing, Devlin standing, which was because this is the thing you notice in this thing. If you watch Independence Day and Godzilla and Stargate, there is a major Jack O'Neill in all three films.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a major Jack O'Neill in all three films. And then there's also a specky nerd in all three films.
Yes, Goldblum, there is. Yeah.
Spader and Broderick, right?
Yes. I mean, really, actors. He got the actors to play the nerds, and they were all very interesting actors. Especially Goldblum and James Spader. I mean,
but you go back to the characters, because these were the days when you actually kind of rounded off characters and you gave them something to work with. And when you got to like the Jack O'Neill character, you had the accidental gun death of his kid, which is at the time in the 90s, that was quite a heavy topic to cover. With accidental gun deaths, because it's like kind of. Statistically, if you're in a pool, you're more likely to drown in the pool than you are to get shot by your own gun. But there were a lot of things about people who own their own guns getting shot at that time in the 90s. I don't know if that's true now, because maybe there was things that people learnt from that. But they had that was quite heavy. And then you had Daniel Jackson, where he was just nobody was taking him seriously, and he had that conference, and everybody walked out apart from that one guy, who then came and talked to, which was really nice. We just come there listening to him chatting away and everything like that. So you kind of had those bits there. So you had those two characters kind of grounded with some kind of character building thing, because other characters kind of fucking miss that shit.
But it's interesting because I've got some facts around this, and we do have to slightly cover SG1 again, but I'll go into it. So, as I said earlier, the film was largely made independent of the studio, because this was while Roland Emmerich wasn't yet a sort of mainstream movie maker, and he has since, because of the fallout of him not being able to make these Stargate movies, he's now refusing to make big budget films. Because he wants to work independent of studios. He feels like he's been screwed over by studios. And it was the fact that in 2014 that the studio were like, oh, we're going to do it. And then because the studio just kept getting involved, and it just stalled by 2016. So that's a thing. And this is one of the main reasons why Roland didn't like SG1. Anyway, James Spader, who is he's very very good in this.
I just had a quick look at the IMDb page, yeah, and apparently when the alien takes control of the boy, there's a sound effect, yeah, and they stripped out James Brown's screaming from "I Feel Good" for the sound effect.
Yeah, I had that.
I just had a I know where you get your notes from, so I thought I'd have a.
No, I don't get everything from IMDb. I read quite a long article about how they lost control of it and how it was made, which was really quite interesting. But I didn't want to bore people with a lot of it, so I left most of it out. But it is very interesting. But James Spader did not like the script. In fact, he thought the script was terrible. And he was really just cashing a paycheck. But I thought he was very good in this film.
I'll be honest with you.
And I enjoyed it.
Wrong with actors saying, I did it for the money.
No, there's nothing wrong with it.
What do I do? I do work. What do I do it for? Do I do it for the love of the job? No, I do it for the fucking money. That's perfectly acceptable.
But, I mean, you know, one of the things that was in this film that was taken over to SG1 was the glowing eyes. Now, the glowing eyes came around because when the film was initially tested in front of test audiences, it really didn't do well. And one of the reasons was that people did not realize that Ra was an alien. So as an after effect, as a way to sort of symbolize this guy's an alien, was they put the glowing eyes in. This was a concept after the initial test screenings of it. They put the glowing eyes in to make sure the audiences knew this guy is a you're going to get a slap later disagreeing with your wife. Yeah, you like to live dangerously. Okay, it's like poking a fucking tiger with a stick. You only do it so much.
I love Stargate.
The glowing eyes were added in as an afterthought and then it started testing considerably better. There were a few other little changes, but one of the major things was the glowing eyes. This was the first movie, believe it or not, to have its own dedicated website.
No, the first
every movie
website was Sneakers.
Nope. SG1. Stargate. That's what it says. That's the fact. I found that on about 5 different websites.
I'm sure it was Sneakers.
And wasn't Sneakers after this?
I'll have to have a look now. No, it's talking about when the website went up.
Wasn't Sneakers after this? One of the reasons it had a website was the way it was funded. Because he got producers because it wasn't studio backed. Well, according to everyone, this was the first one to have its own dedicated website. Those are the facts. I'm not arguing with them.
The facts if Sneakers had it first. And
Google it.
Because everyone was fair over the fact that it had its own website.
Now, this confirm it, but this is what I found. So we've covered quite a lot of the facts, and you stole the one about bloody James Brown. Here's the thing, right? Like a lot of Roland Emmerich's films, the score to this film, which to me is probably the best score out of all of Roland Emmerich's films, I can love the score. I mean, the opening scene always got me, and SG1 kind of copied the movie, but they changed the theme slightly. They recomposed it.
One thing I didn't like about SG1 was I kind of maybe one of the reasons I didn't like it up until a certain point was because of that opening title thing where they're going through and they're showing off the statue, and when they get to the gate and little bits of action kind of just made me feel that something exciting was about to happen, and the other one kind of it felt very separate from it. It's not like if you like it, you like it, but
I think it was meant to connect you to the movie. Although the theme is the same theme, but it's composed very differently if you listen to them, because when SG1 brought that straight to DVD movie out, Arc of Truth, right, their first movie, they used the original movie theme in that. And it's different. In Arc of Truth, it's the original movie theme, whereas it's a bit faster tempo, I believe, in the TV series. Anyway, I love that opening scene. And it was by a guy called David Arnold. And we know who David Arnold is because but this is an interesting thing. When this film was being made, David Arnold wasn't a movie composer. In fact, he'd done a few short films, but he hadn't really made any money. And so he was working as a clerk in a record store in London. And
he No, hang on a second. No. Did he have a part-time job on a Saturday in the thingy?
No, he was working as a thing because he hadn't really done any major composing. SG1 was Stargate was his first major gig. If you look at his, he'd done a few shorts here and there, but he wasn't making it. So he was working as a clerk in a record store. And he was doing little bits of composing. It was a part-time job, but he was working as a clerk in a record store. Right, that's true. And Roland Emmerich famously, it's like, but this guy's done no real work. He's never done a movie. He's not even done a TV episode. He's done a few short films here and there. And he works as a clerk in a record store. He famously said this. And then Arnold came and played him that theme tune from the beer, and Emmerich just loved it. And ever since then, Emmerich used him in Independence Day, Godzilla, and a few other of his movies. And they've had a relationship since Stargate, but it was Stargate that got him out the gate. And to me, arguably, it's a brilliant soundtrack. I love Stargate soundtrack. I love that theme at the beginning.
It's one of those really good movie score themes that sticks out.
Yeah,
I think we had a conversation about how movies don't have definitive music like it used to. I think the last thing it was like Harry Potter, and I was arguing with you that some do, like the Avengers thing, it existed. I'm sure we had this argument on the podcast when we did it last, because the Avengers theme's quite distinct in that. But during the 90s, you did have some quite distinct bits. Well, the 70s to 90s, you did have some really good, distinct bits of music.
And I agree, because I love movie scores. I've got a Spotify playlist that would take you about 22 hours to play through, because of all the movie themes that I've got in. I'm a big fan of it, and we've talked a lot on podcasts the use of music, and there are not a lot of directors out there these days that really use the music or put the importance of music, especially when you're doing continuing films. One of the most jarring things about the newer Spider-Man, not the Marvel Spider-Man, but the sort of the middle Spider-Man movies, should we say, was that the first film has quite a good score. They then brought Hans Zimmer in for the second film, and he completely changed the theme. And
hang on, are we talking about Tobey Maguire or what's his name, Garfield?
No, we're talking about the Andrew Garfield, because Tobey Maguire has the same theme.
It doesn't count.
No, but I'm using it as an example of how a lot of people don't see the importance in music. And you say that in Harry Potter. Yeah, Harry Potter kept on to that continuing theme, but the music changes massively throughout Harry Potter, because obviously they had different composers, but they did at least hold on to Williams' theme throughout.
One of the best movie scores, which if you take away from the movie actually detracts from the movie, is 2009's Tron Legacy.
Yes,
the music in that helps make the film. If you remove the music from it, the Daft Punk soundtrack, the film turns a bit crap.
The use of music and sound. I mean, Dunkirk. We've talked about it. The music. It's a character.
Anxiety attack. It's having an anxiety. The music adds to that. It's got the ticking clock and whatnot. Yeah, and I swear to God, my heart goes in time with the ticking clock. And that clock is ticking quite bloody quickly in that thing.
But I mean, I love the Avengers theme, but he famously did not use it in the second film, and you don't hear it until the end credits, which is really stupid.
Yeah, that's Sweden though.
And you're right, because the Avengers theme is awesome. And
there's
that
jokes,
annoys me. Marvel's not been good with
second.
music.
There's jokes on the internet that the Avengers theme goes with anything. Yeah. So when you have like any scene in any film, yeah, go to YouTube and look up the Avengers theme goes with anything. Yeah. And they have like any scenes, like you can have like a Batman movie. Yeah. And it's like the bit where they turn around and they fight in the third one with Bane, and you've got the cops, and it plays the and then they fight, and it literally goes with anything. It's that pliable bit of music. But getting back to Stargate,
you just brought something out. You've just brought something out. You just mentioned Bane. I've got to tell you a funny story. I know in the UK it's now mandatory to wear masks when you're on public transport, but where I live, the minute you set out the front door, you have to have a mask on. My wife has got one of these sort of black ones, but it's got one of these air filter things, and she just looks like fucking Bane. And so every time she puts on the mask, it's like, Danny, please go, now you'll have my permission to die. Because every time she puts the fucking thing on, I can see Bane. But anyway, go on.
I think, how many more facts you got?
That was pretty much it, because I think we've covered everything. As I said, we've gone over the fact that there was going to be sequels to this, but that never happened. The MGM, they still own the rights to Stargate, and there is something out there. I'm not sure whether we will ever see anything to come out of the Stargate universe again, but I would like to think that we would, because
I'll be honest with you. In current day, no. Let current day pass, and then everything to be nice, because I don't want it full of fucking identity politics. I want it like that cool kind of adventure series, because it was a cool adventure series. Okay, maybe I didn't like the first part of Stargate SG-1, but after that, I found it just to be like a really cool kind of. It was just something nice to watch. Like you'd flick on Sky.
It was happy.
And
it was hopeful.
It was happy. It was hopeful. You get because what will happen is they'll do what they did to Stargate. They'll do what they did to bloody Star Trek, and it'll just be this miserable fucking horrible excuse of a TV series, and I don't want that, because I have fond memories of this. As I said, Stargate Atlantis is my favorite one, and I think it's for the fact that I think one of the big factors is the fact that I got to watch it from the beginning. My biggest problem in Stargate Atlantis is probably Tori Higginson, who played I can't remember.
Well, she got chopped. She got chopped.
But this is the funny thing is she was in a TV series that I really liked that you never watched, called Dark Matter, and her character in that, she was great as the character in that.
And she was recast as well, because the initial actress to play that role was in, because SG-1 did a kind of backdoor pilot for Atlantis, if you remember. And the character was in that, and it was a blonde. And then they recast it as Tori.
We'll have to do SG-1. We'll have to go and maybe both of us should go and watch the entire. When we finished a run of 10 of these fast food films, we'll go and watch the entire first series of SG-1 and review the entire lot. Just thinking, because I do like, okay. As I said, the first series isn't my favorite, but it's still good TV.
There's some brilliant episodes in there, and I mean, the show lost like half of its leading cast, or they lost its leading role. And a lot of people said that SG-1 would never be the same without Richard Dean Anderson, and it was different. But by God, Ben Bowder and what's her face coming in did a damn good job. And those final few seasons with the what's his face were really fucking good.
You know what I liked? One thing I really liked about Stargate SG-1 and Atlantis was it turned into a refuge for people whose TV shows had been cancelled.
Yeah.
So you had Ben Browder and Claudia Moretz, who were from Farscape, that got cancelled. You had the guy who played was it Dr. Phlox in what's the Enterprise? Yeah,
Robert. It was It was the guy that played the engineer in Enterprise. He was in Atlantis as Michael.
Dr. Phlox was in Stargate SG-1 as one of the nerds.
Was he? Oh, yes, you're right. Yes, he was. And Robert Picardio was in it, obviously, in the last.
Ricardo was in it as the base head. I really enjoyed him as the lead of Atlantis.
Yes.
Annoyingly, the best one was Carter, and it was great because when Carter was in charge of Atlantis, she pretty much fucking fixed everything, and it was a case of. And then it was like a case of we have to get rid of her because she'll solve everything, and we won't have any more TV shows left to do.
But this because she headed the base for season 3 of Atlantis, didn't she? She came in. I mean, season 3 or was it 4?
Whole of season 4.
Season 4. Yeah, because Tori Hingson did the first 3, I think,
and then he did 4, and then
Picardio took over season 5. Picardio. But. I mean, yeah, but here again, Amanda Tapping is a perfect example of how this series was progressive. And yet, you're right. If it was made today, they'd still find something to take exception to.
I do like the fact because you had Amanda Tapping in there, and because she had so much experience with fighting the replicators and taking on the gold and the Ori and all of that, yeah. And then when she went over to Atlantis, she took all of that stuff there, and all of a sudden they're just getting shit done. I was like, this is great because you're like, you felt like they could take on anything. And I remember the one where the 3 of them get trapped in an underground bunker. That's Rodney, Jill State's character, I can't remember her name, the doctor, and Amanda Tapping. And they refer to The Real Hustle from BBC 3.
Yes.
As a thing to we have to talk about the other we have to talk about SG-1, Atlantis, and Stargate Universe. Maybe we should, as I said, do the thing. Oh, no. That's you're talking about one of my favorite TV shows.
He's touching on something here. Okay,
that's my favorite TV show of all time. That and The Expanse are the 2 TV shows that I'm just like.
As you've brought this up, I will tell you a story. I have known this gentleman here for many, many, many years. Right? We sort of like grew up at college, and I was always like his big Trekkie. He goes, "You got to watch Babylon 5," and I went, "No, it looks shit. All the effects crap." He goes, "You got to watch Babylon 5." No, shit. I watched Babylon 5 because he made me watch the videos, and I have since watched it probably every couple of years since. It's probably my favorite series.
I was like a drug dealer to you.
Yeah.
I've got
he was like, you got to give me the next video. He's like, because you only give me one video at a time, and don't give me the next fucking video.
Oh, B5.
Especially season fucking 3 when the Shadow War kicked. I was like, "You fucking get them."
I find that weird because B5 has got more in common with Lord of the Rings than it does with any other sci-fi.
We could do an entire freaking 10-hour stream on Babylon 5 and how it was constructed, how it was made, how the fact that he conceived it as wrote the bloody book before it was even out there. He knew where this series had a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Hang on a second. And the fact that the people who created Deep Space Nine held on to the Bible that he created, which had his
this is true.
And then they were forced to give it back and pay out a lovely thing. Never watched season 5 because the end of season. Yeah, right. Hang on a second.
Funny enough, right, the final episode of Babylon 5 season 5 would have aired as the final episode of season 4, but they held on to it. But that episode that ends season 5 was shot at the end of season 4. So it's if you don't watch any other episode, watch the final episode of season 5 because it's brilliant.
Yeah, that's the only one because it's season 4. It's annoying because hang on a second. Season 5 was setting up a load of stuff. It was setting a load of stuff that was supposed to be going into Crusade. You had the Drac, who were the servants of the Shadows.
But they were also set up in the movie Call to Arms as well. Which
they were set up primarily in this. They became this kind of weird thing that was happening in the background.
Oh no, the Drac launch a plague, don't they, in Call to Arms? That's when the plague and then that's the beginning of Crusades, isn't it?
Yes. Because in a genius move, they turned around and went, look, if we can't get him with the planet killer, we'll get him with the plague. And they got him with the plague. And it was great because the plague was actually in Crusades was supposed to be dealt with by beginning of season 3. They were supposed to figure out how to do the plague because the plague was an AI. We went from Stargate to everything else. We have to.
Well, no, we've gone to Babylon 5 because you mentioned Babylon 5. You realise what you have done. We're both massive B5 fans, and I have this man to thank because I never would have watched it, and I think I've seen it about 10 times now. Funny enough, recently watched it. I watched it at the beginning of this year. In fact, I bought the whole lot on Amazon and watched it all again because I love it. And you realize how much it influences sci-fi. Like, you know, a lot of people will never admit to watching Babylon 5, but you watch a lot of modern sci-fi. There is a shitload of influence in B5.
It's because the guy JMS said that he got most of his inspiration from British TV series such as Doctor Who and Blake Seven. Yeah, and one of the big ones was Blake Seven, with the fact that you had this kind of, and Blake Seven is a massive influence on science fiction, where you've got this ragtag crew with different opinions. So Farscape is pretty much Blake Seven. Dark Matter is pretty much Blake Seven. When you've got all these kind of people with all conflicting things, but they're all forced together, being chased down by someone. And I've got to watch Blake Seven because I've only seen the pilot episode, and that was back in the 90s, and that was really good because the guy was accused, that Blake himself was accused of fucking like paedophilia or something like that, and some really disgusting things to make people hate him. So that was the reason he was on the run, and we knew he was innocent, which is great. Dude, we've got a lot to talk about outside fast food films.
We do, because B5 and Stargate are some of my most treasured series, and I suppose you're right. If they made them at the moment, we would have problems. But no, Babylon 5 is it's up there. It's at the top. It's probably at the top of my list. Once you get into it, the storytelling is so damn good. That you don't give a shit about the effects.
I had to show my son. He didn't understand because he hadn't watched the TV show. Like, one of the best things I ever saw in a TV show was there's this character called Morden, and it's when Londo catches him, and they've put the shadows on the island of Selene, or wherever it is, and he turns around and said, because our ship's going to, we've got to remove the shadow influence from this planet, other Vorlons are going to blow the fucking thing up. And he turns around and goes, yeah. He goes, but you're not going to go remove the ships. He goes, we can approach we can sense a ship approaching from miles away. So what are you going to do, Malari, huh? Blow up the island? And then he turns around and goes, now you mention it. And then from orbit, you see the detonate the
brilliant scene, yes.
And then the guy's holy fuck, he blew the island.
Fucking brilliant scene that was. One of my favourite scenes.
And it was great. It was great because Morden at that time hadn't had his comeuppance. He really came close to having his comeuppance with Sheridan and Garibaldi, where they caught him, and Sheridan was told to back off. Yeah, so he came close to having his comeuppance then, and then he does have Londo gets him to have his comeuppance, and it's magnific. It's brilliant.
Londo was one of my favourite characters because
Londo and Shakar, they could have just done a series with just those two.
Shakar, I love Shakar. I love those two. But Londo and Shakar were I think they're probably my favourite characters. But the other thing that I love about it is, it's like, I mean, it's not the password anymore, so I can say this. But I work, or I still do work in IT. But when I first started working out as like a single IT admin, I used to pick passwords from my from sci-fi shows. And my boss went, so what's the new admin password? And I told him what it was. He goes, well, that doesn't sound like it's from a sci-fi show. I went, it is.
I know.
Because I use Garibaldi's password because I love that scene. It's like, he goes, so what's your password? Peekaboo. The guy just like, well, nobody's going to guess that.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
It's so fucking true. For years, the admin password for that company was Peekaboo.
We do need to go back to the TV shows of bygone era because there's some classics. You got Red Dwarf. Star Trek: The Generation was really good. Voyager was good. Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, even though it ripped off B5, was really good. Not as good as B5 though. It was still really good.
It was great for Star Trek.
Yeah, then
it was great for Star Trek.
Quantum Leap. I've been watching Timeless, and it reminds me of a modern day version of Quantum Leap.
I love Quantum Leap.
And that's
again,
the thing.
A show that wasn't ended properly though. That was the thing. Quantum Leap deserved a better ending than it got. I mean, you could argue the same about B5, but as I said, that final episode of season 5 is very, very good. And I won't spoil it for you because you haven't seen it, but I love that final scene.
Okay,
Um,
I think we've wandered off into the weeds, and we've got some ideas for some
yes,
more broadcasts.
we have, but
What
yeah,
we
I
crack.
mean that's pretty much covered my facts for Stargate. And it is a fast food movie, but I think there's more depth to it. Again, a bit like Independence Day, but uh, it's different because I have very fond memories of it because I went. It was one of the very few films as a family we went to see, and
Yeah, it's
and we
like
all loved it.
there's a film called Deep Blue Sea, and it's mine and my wife's film because it was our first date that we went on, and we had
I
little
remember.
gummy sharks, and we went to Woking Cinema, and we loved the hell out of that film for that. And I got to see Saffron Burrow stripped down to her underwear. Bonus.
I mean, I don't. You see, because my parents are sci-fi nuts. I mean, I had no hope, but back then there weren't that many sci-fi films. So, as a whole, we never went. I think the next time I remember going to the cinema as a family was Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
And funny enough, the year after my grandfather died, my grandmother came to stay with us, and we took her to see Narnia. And that was the last film as a family we went to see, which is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was not a patch on Lord of the Rings. But I remember we saw each of the Lord of the Rings films as a family because my mum was a massive Tolkien fan.
Our last family film that I watched, I can remember, was an Adam Sandler film, and we've never spoken to each other since. and on that note, I think it's time we say goodbye. So
it's been really good this week. Thank you to Golin the Hobbit. It's been great talking with somebody and having somebody commenting. So thanks for that.
yes.
Massively appreciated. Thanks, Tanny, for watching.
Yes,
You can
Stargate
kill him
Universe is
for
great.
disagreeing with you.
All right,
Don't make his dinner.
I'm on the barbecue today.
Don't. I fancy barbecue.
I've got to get down and sort some stuff out. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me, and we'll see you again soon. Actually, tomorrow.
Too slow, Keith. You're just too slow.